Well, welcome everybody to Forever Bristol City podcast. We're back. I don't suppose you ever went away, really. But yes, we're reviewing. This is first of our pre-season reviews. It's featuring Dave Tuvey, who's hosting today, and Tom Sutton. We're going to talk about the story so far. What do we think of Streber Ball? So without any further ado, hand you over to Dave Tuvey. Dave, over to you, mate.
Good morning, everyone. Summer's coming to an end. Sheffield United is right there. Are you excited for the new season yet? If you're not, you will be, I promise. Football does that to you. So just be ready for the emotional roller coaster that we've got coming. So let's get to it. Tom, Mr. P, yesterday, bit of a feisty game. What was your overall thoughts of yesterday's game? What did you see that you enjoyed? What did you see that didn't please you so much?
I liked the level of aggression. I thought that Knight had a good game yesterday. I thought Knight was almost back to his best. I liked Reese. I liked Mehmeti, how direct Mehmeti was. I thought potentially that was one of Mehmeti's better consistent 90-minute games where he picks the ball up, he's driving at people with confidence. That's the sort of Anis Mehmeti you like to see that gets the best out of him. And to see Reese's natural striking instincts. It's been a while since maybe a Chris Martin that you've seen a guy that has natural striking instincts, and the way he hits through the ball, I've not seen a player since Semenyo do that. The level of power he generates on a ball. So that was my biggest positives to take away. I think there's still areas to work on in terms of, I think we can be left open at times, particularly down the left with you left wing back. I don't see him defensively being a championship standard left wing back. But overall, I was very positive about the game yesterday.
My thoughts, Dave, were I felt going into the game based on what I'd seen before, because I watched the Newport game and then what highlights there were of the Cheltenham game. I was feeling quite depressed, actually. So I sat down in front of my computer watching the game live, and I felt, instead of depressed, I felt quite pleased because it was a good, as Tom just said, feisty performance. There was some good football played out there. Great attendance, 9,000 for a pre-season friendly, 1,000 City fans making the journey down there. And Plymouth, under Cleverly, you've got to say they're a team that will be looking to bounce back at the first attempt. But as Tom said, some good individual performances there. Shout out for Thomas, who's been ridiculed for his why has he even got a goalkeeping contract at Ashton Gate. Didn't have a lot to do, but handling was impeccable when he did. One good save late on in a half. I thought Atkinson looked at his imposing best. I mean, it's like having a new player with him being out. Randall looked lively, put in a good shot. McCory looked powerful down the right. The left-hand side, as Tom said, you ain't no left wing back, still no place for Elijah Morrison, because you'd say he was a more logical, physical person there. But Mehmeti looked sharp. Mehmeti, who's not signing a contract, it seems. Reese up front, as Tom said, Semenyo, last player we saw that could put his foot through the ball, really powerful. It was encouraging. Even Sinclair Armstrong looked a little bit lively when he came on, but that's pretty damn close, I think, to how we'll line up at Bramall Lane on the opening day of the season.
What really stood out for me was the aggression. A few times last season, we were slightly accused of being a bit too nice. And 2 weeks before the season starts in a pre-season game, and I know it takes two teams to tango, getting involved in that kind of coming together, it's not something you see. And it's maybe there's an intention there, right? We're not such nice guys anymore. One in, all in, instinctively, more than what do I do here, which I found quite interesting. Right, moving on slightly. Tom, reflections of last season. Is it something to build on, or is it a season in isolation? How do you see last season with a bit of time to look back?
It's a great question, and I think that it in itself is a season in isolation, because you have to say he's had one full season, obviously fantastic achievement getting into the playoffs, but it was a strange season last season. To get in the playoffs with 68 points usually is a feat that doesn't happen. The way we got in, the way we picked up form was quite un-Bristol City-esque, being so dominant at home post-Christmas. But you have to look at the sort of player improvements last season, and you could argue Knight got better, McCrory. But in terms of young players coming through, nothing, he didn't help in that department. In terms of transfer recruitment in last season, you'd argue McNally. That was about it. That really made a big impact, I think, in our team. Max Bird was signed this window before in the January. And obviously McNally picked up his injury. Both strikers, you'd have to say at this point, are failures of transfer business, and Sinclair, Armstrong and Fally Miulu, particularly Fally, who's not even, it appears, in the first team setup. If he's playing with Cheltenham with all the fringe players and only getting 45 minutes, getting hooked off at half time, that's not boding well for the start of the season. So I would have to say, for me personally, I think last season is viewed as just that. It's just a one-season thing rather than a foundation to build on for Streber this season. I don't think Streber was left with much to build on himself. I feel like he's had to come in and lay new groundworks, lay new patterns, and do it himself type of thing.
Okay, so for both of you, this is a question for both of you, Mr. P first. If last season hadn't happened under Manning, bearing in mind the money spent on one side, but finishing sixth and causing that belief that we can go further on the other side, do you think the club would be in a better position today if Manning hadn't been in charge, or do you think that's deeply harsh and unfair?
Well, there's two things to look at there. Where would we have been had Nigel Pearson had an extended run? But I think the fact that Nigel's got back into the game, I think health was an issue there, so we were going to have a change of manager.
Yeah, sure.
Can't take away the fact that Manning got us into the playoffs, but it was, some people think this is very harsh, but it was a fluke. Somebody said on OTIB yesterday that, it was a very even division. Everybody was taking points off each other. That's true to a point, but more importantly, the top four were taking points off of everybody else, and that's why 68 points got us sixth. Yeah, 68 points was 6 points better than last season, which by itself is an improvement. But Manning, he had that awful tragedy to deal with, and some people, might not have come back from that. But Manning was at Bristol City for himself as part of furthering his own career. And when you look at how the shopping spree that Norwich appeared to be going on, there's no academy pathway up at Norwich City. And if he doesn't get to the playoffs, that guy Napper, he doesn't hang around their chief executive when it comes to binning people off like he did with Thorup. I think Manning will be on his way. So back to the question, would the club be better off without Manning's tenure? It's very hypothetical. I would say, well, he got to the playoffs, but at what cost? And the cost was, no pathway for youngsters, and it was a one-off season in the sense of 68 points. Doesn't normally get that success, but it looks great on his CV.
But couldn't you argue that if it was another manager simply finishing 12th place, we don't have expectations, we don't have a standard to set of what's possible. So we needed, even if it was a slightly odd season, we needed something to show, hey, you guys can actually get into 6th place. It's not 12th place forever. Maybe he's broken through the door, but maybe the cost is too high. What's your thought?
I think that he clearly understood the team. He understood the starting 11 and he understood how to get the best out of them. I think he looked at it and he was very risk averse. He was very safe, let's keep nice and structured. But it's undeniable that post-Christmas, we were fantastic.
At home.
Terrible away. Consistently under his tenure. It wasn't just last season. It was actually the back end of the season before that we weren't very good away from home. But I do think that Manning was a good appointment for us. But I completely agree with Dave's point that he's almost treats football like a business. He wants to see level of progression year on year. Like he's scaling up a business because he didn't have that professional career as a player. He's got to prove himself as a manager, and every tick box is another thing he can go to the club with and go, look what I've achieved. It's not like he's got a reputation like a Lampard or a Rooney where you might get a job just because of the player you were. Manning's not got that. He's not got necessarily the contacts in the game. So he's got, he got the achievement with MK Dons. He then went to Oxford, and at the first opportunity jumped ship up a level. And then this one, he's looked at it and gone, I've broken the 17-year deadlock. I can go to a Norwich with this and say, invest in me. I've broken the 17-year deadlock, and let's see what we can do, because I almost can guarantee results if you invest in me. I think Dave Febb's made a great point, and Liam Manning uses transfer recruitment at the cost of academy players and also as a shortcut to his success. You just have to look at what Norwich is doing. There's been a complete overhaul. I know they've lost signs, but Sargent's still there. I think they've signed 3 or 4 goalkeepers this window, and they only lost one in Angus Gunn. So Norwich will be an interesting outfit, but I think overall Manning was a positive for the club. But I also think that this season's the right one to move on, because you need to re-establish that pathway.
Can I just say as well, Dave, about Manning? I mean, the whole 50-odd years that I've been watching City, Norwich, a bit like Tottenham and West Ham, they're always seen as an attacking, free-flowing side. They pack them in up at Carrow Road, massive crowd relative to the catchment area. And if he attempts to play this safety-first football like he did for most of the time he was here, as somebody said on the text feed here, up Western Red said up until Xmas, some of Manning's football was dire and boring. It was, and he is going to be under immense pressure. And, he's got to get Norwich to the playoffs. If he gets into the playoffs and is a losing finalist, wouldn't mind betting that he'd move on again.
No, exactly.
And if he's not moved on, if he finishes below 8th, he'll be gone, I reckon. Yeah. But that's by the by.
Okay, so that's our little nod to last season. Time to look forward. The football season is incoming very soon. So first, we're going to talk about the comings and goings. First of all, the big going. Mr. P, Naki Wells leaving. The right decision? Difficult decision? Thank you very much for your endeavours, but we need to do it. Where do you stand on letting him go?
I think it's a heart versus head one. Heart says keep him on, give him another year, good in the dressing room, etc., etc., etc. Head says 35-year-old, best days are behind him. He's got the athleticism of somebody 5 years younger. Great for us last season. Goals made the difference between a playoff spot and probably finishing 14th or 15th or something like that. So right for him to go. Appalling the way it was handled.
Before you go any further, can I just give a shout out to OSIB? They have a fantastic interview incoming this week on that. So if you want to hear more from Naki Wells, you'll get all the details there. But they've been kind enough to do some preludes and give little snippets. So when you talk about the way it was handled, the bits and pieces that he said about being offered a contract and then or being implied that something was incoming and it didn't come, is that what you want your football club to be doing? Is that a good way to handle business?
Well, I think, David, it reflects similarly to what happened with, so we're led to believe, with the Tommy Conway situation. And as Tom just said, Matty James, that there's certain people in a certain position there that do not appear to handle things in, let's say, the most professional way. You don't say something to somebody and then you do a volte face and the person doesn't hear any more about it. I think if Manning had still been here, I think Naki may well have got that extra year. Yeah. We'd have still needed to go out and get Reese, and then the prospect of Reese and Naki for one season probably would have been a bit more exciting than what we've got to look forward to at the moment. So Naki, disgraceful the way it was handled by all accounts, but it was a head situation, not a heart one. I don't know if Tom feels the same.
Tom, what do you think?
I think he did enough for a 1-year deal. I really do. I think as well, in terms of a transitional player under different managers, he is the perfect striker, the perfect leader to bring that sort of the cohesion across the management board to the player side. And you just have to look at the player reaction when he went, how devastated they were in comparison to when Manning went. And no one said, thank you, Liam Manning. It was all, thank you, Naki Wells. What a fantastic guy. All the best. I just think that Naki Wells, he would have been phased out this year, but I think that he would have known that. He seems like a very intelligent individual. At 35, he knows that his role would be less and less and less. But it seemed like, I can only go off inference on what is he was okay with that, because he said he wasn't allowed to be kept on in any aspect, because if that's not a first team starter, that could be coming off the bench, a bit of experience up top, a bit of, galvanization. Because when he came on, he bought something I don't think we have. And that was a bit of nous, a bit of art, like, I'll lean into this guy, I'll buy a foul here. And he never let us down. I think as well, he got better the longer he was here at Bristol City. I really think he earned himself at least a 1-year deal. I wouldn't have given him 2. I would have gone to him and offered him the 1. And I bet he would have been fantastic with a coaching role within that as well. Could he have helped out with the under 18 strikers? Could he have helped out with the under 21 strikers? The people that you're talking about pathway this season, I think Nahki Wells would have been a great leader at bedding in and giving advice to these younger strikers coming through, the Billy Phillips of the world. And it's a difficult decision, but the club opted for me what was the wrong one. But you can understand it in terms of an age thing, and also he doesn't fit Streber's system naturally, so you can understand it.
And despite him taking a pay cut when he had that last contract, he was still probably one of the higher wage earners of the club. Talking about Luton, where he's gone, see Cal Naismith's been their captain, so hope they don't mind a captain who's probably going to be watching most of the game from the sideline. But there we go. Sorry, Dave.
No problem. Interesting. So, incomings. First of all, the new striker, Reese. What are your thoughts early on, and what do you know about him? Are you happy with the signing? Is it about what you expected? What are your thoughts overall, Mr. P?
Well, based on yesterday, you'd have to say Reese looks a good signing. Good bit of business getting him for free. One of the Sky pundits, I think it was Goodman, said, why would Reese go to a club like Bristol City, which is almost undermining us? Tom said earlier, I think that and I said to somebody yesterday, he reminds me of Chris Martin when Chris Martin had a little bit of pace. So I think he looks a good signing, and that's the market we're in. That's probably as good as we're going to get, unless we go to the lottery of buying players from overseas.
Tom, look into your crystal ball. How many goals is acceptable for him this season as the main striker? What do you want to see from him?
As the main striker, I think we'll look to rely on him this year, and I want 12 goals from Emile Reese. I think that would be a good return on investment, because he's going to be on a massive deal at us. I would put him up there. I would say, without a shadow of doubt, he'll be in top 3 earners, Emile Reese, because the guy that did well last year, he's had his injury issues, but on a free, he would have had half the championship in for him. And he signed pretty soon after his contract ended, which tells me that the club went to him and gave him a nice package.
And then, Dave, you have to say that for the club to go and get him, and to some extent Randall as well, you're going to come on to him, that is good business.
Yeah.
I agree.
And at the level that we're at with the limited funds we have, we're going to win some, and we're going to get some turkeys as well. Yeah. So,
Definitely.
if we're beating people with a stick for Armstrong and Mayulu, God, at the same time, you've got to say 2 clever bits of business. Yeah.
But that's what we've done well previously. Last year, I think we massively went off track with our transfer. How we do transfers. We don't spend $2.5 million on a foreign striker. Not that it's not worked for other clubs, but we saw under the Mark Ashton era that just paying these wages and Fanny's on a 4-year deal. He'd be giving him a 4-year deal, and he'll be on good wages as well. And you've spent $2.5 million allegedly on his transfer fee. So we really went away. We overpaid for Scott Twine without a shadow of doubt because of Liam Manning's pursuit, and that was very public, and Burnley would have used that. So I think that Randall and Reese is going back to what Bristol City do best, and looking at the out of contract market and looking at who's been relegated. And I think there's still some players in League One that are getting poached a little bit now. I think that Burnell's could pick up for QPR from Burton. And there's a couple from Pompey that, Poku for QPR, again, another good pickup. But I think Randall and Reese are going back to what Bristol City do best within the transfer and looking at value for money.
So from what you're both saying, adding Randall, adding Reese, this adds to the depth of the squad. It probably adds to the first 11. Both good signings, both what you want to see from the club. Now let's look at the goalkeeping situation. Max got injured or re-injured, depending on how you look at it, and we've had to bring in 1, possibly 2 signings. I don't think the second one is official yet, but it seems to be working in that direction. First of all, Lumley. What are your thoughts on Lumley? And if we assume Vitek is coming in, what are your thoughts there? And what do you know about him, if anything?
Well, Lumley, whichever way you look at it, he's got 100 plus, maybe 150 appearances at championship level, but his YouTube highlights very much low lights. Yeah, it was interesting that he played in, I'll call it the B team at Cheltenham on Friday night, and then Thomas came in. This goalkeeper from Man United, that according to the Oracle, real Bristol boy, Ian Gay, is signed. You know, I mean,
He was at the game yesterday.
and he was at the game yesterday. Yeah, there's a picture of the guy. So there's obviously some truth there. This is a guy who's 6'6", Man United youngster. He looks very impressive. You know, I don't think we've had a goalkeeper that big. Well, I probably have, but Jan Moller comes to mind back in the dim and distant 1980 season.
Is he the nailed-on starter?
I think he has to be. I think he has to be because the thing is, you know, Max is out for 3 to 4 months. Yeah, and you know, where does that leave? Well, we're going to have an overabundance of goalkeepers come Christmas, but then it's a loan. And again, if Mr. Gay is right, there's a recall clause in January for Man United, so that might dovetail well in Max establishing himself as number one, with Lumley as number two. But if you're any of the younger kids down there as goalkeepers, you know, you've got as much chance of getting a first team appearance as Princess Beatrice has of becoming queen. But there we go, Tom.
I think that I'm not a massive fan of the Lumley signing, I must admit. I think that Max is mistake prone. I think Lumley is even more mistake prone. Although I think that Lumley, in the bits that I've seen, is good distribution. I think that he's a good second choice, but I wouldn't feel comfortable watching Joe Lumley in goal for 3-4 months. I think that Vitek, 21, very young for a goalkeeper, but season-long loan, it's not going to be a massive loan fee, I imagine. And I think that it's clear that the club don't view Joe Lumley as a number one, a starter. I think they view him as a backup, because if you did view Joe Lumley as a starter, then you wouldn't bring in this guy. You'd have Lewis Thomas and Joe Lumley as your 1 and 2 until Max comes back.
So what you've said there is interesting about the fact that he's 21. Opening day, first game of the season, Sheffield United away. We know what they're going to do in terms of target. Well, we assume we know based on last season. They may just well target that 6-yard box to see if we've sorted it out. Would you put Vitek in goal for game one? You know, at such a young age.
I think, gut feeling, we'll put Lumley in goal. I think Vitek will play MK Dons, and then I think post that Vitek will go in goal against Charlton, and I think after that it'll be Vitek. I think that Lumley will play against Sheffield United, and I think you bring Vitek in a lower pressure game in the Carabao Cup. You just make sure, and then post that, then you start playing him, because there's no way, I think you alluded to it, that he's going to come to us and sit on the bench, because he played 22 times in Austria last year. Before that, it was at Accrington. This guy goes out and he gets experience. United wouldn't want him just coming and sitting on our bench. So there'll be something there that he's going to be getting an opportunity.
He'll start, I would think, Dave, that he'll start against Real. Now, you're going to tell us how to pronounce this. I call it Real Valladolid. I think if Vitek starts against Real Valladolid, he may well start against Sheffield United. Yeah. How do you pronounce Real Valladolid then, Dave?
Valladolid. At the beginning is with a B, and at the end is like a leaf. Valladolid. And once you do that, you're golden. And when I first moved to Spain, everyone used to laugh at me all the time. So I had the practice to get it right. The Spanish B and the leaf at the end, Valladolid. So
I got to pick up on something here. Western Red is very active on the text. When I was saying about the height of our alleged new goalkeeper, he said Sieb Dijkstra, the lone keeper we had back in the 90s, was it, or 8? But everybody used to shout Sieb, and they used to call him Porno, because he looked allegedly like one of the. He had a big hair, and one of those Zapata type moustaches. But big goalkeeper he was, most definitely. Yeah,
I imagine. No worries. So, Tom, question for you. Moving on slightly. The season outlook. What does success look like for you this season? What would you call par? What is failure?
I think success would be top 8. I think par would be above 12th. And I think failure, you're talking below 14th.
But Tom, you've gone straight for position, not in terms of performance. You haven't mitigated it.
Yeah, I think that this season we've got a real dilemma. I think there's a lot of players out in 26 out of contract. So this year, for me, a successful season would be bedding in young players that could potentially take over those out of contract in 26. Okay. Because we sacrificed that last season. And I don't think the right move would be, in terms of progression, keeping all of the 26 out of contracts and just giving new deals out. They need to earn them. It shouldn't be a given that you get a new contract. People like Sam Bell, you know, if Billy Phillips comes in and he shows a level of development, a level of determination, why can't Billy Phillips come in and step on Sam Bell's place, be on lower wages, younger? You know, same with Hayden Roberts if he's still here. Why can't Elijah Morrison come in and take Hayden Roberts' place? These are the type of
Knight
LaBelle. Why can't Knight LaBelle take on 4th choice centre back? Why can't he be the Zach Viner? You know.
So to give you both a situation, and Mr. P, you first. Imagine Knight LaBelle, Morrison, and Stokes get a lot of minutes through this season. They're pretty established. You go into next season, look at them as first teamers, but we finished 14th. Is that acceptable?
That's a good question, Dave. I mean, I'll drop this in here. I was at the HPC with Dan Carter. There was Pete Hinton and Paul Binning and Patch Warner and Matt. We had that audience with Gerhard Struber and his number 2, Bernd Ebert, and also Tom Rawcliffe was there as well. And I said, you know, next season we could end up with a 10%, 8% improvement in points total, yeah, but finish 7th or 8th, yeah. So for me, if we improve, we could finish 8th on a higher points total than we had last season, yeah. The squad is intact, although they've only signed up Pring and Tanner out of contract ones for next summer. And Atkinson. We've got a foundation there, but if we're seeing some more youngsters and the home form is good and the football's better, then in answer to your question, what is par? Par is finishing 10th or above, and failure is, as Tom said, 14th or below. I mean, it's an interesting season. You know, I mean, Gerhard, you know, his track record, he doesn't stay anywhere very, very long. You know, so if he has success with us, will he use us as a platform going forward?
Well, it's a curious question because ultimately, you know, you've seen pictures of him in the community, and sometimes a manager they do move around, but sometimes they just hit a club that it fits and they're there for a little bit longer. And in terms of Struber, what's his rope this season? Because he's going in, he's got most of a pre-season, he's going into a season. Do you expect to hit the ground running, or because it's a totally different way of playing, is there a little bit of rope there at the beginning of the season which will affect our league position next season? How much rope are you willing to give, essentially?
I would say as long as he delivers upon a new, more entertaining style of play, I think that fans will get behind him. I think there wasn't a lot of attachment to Liam Manning from the fan base overall. I think that Struber could really come in and galvanise fans. I really think that there could be a very strong partner. He's an emotional guy, and I think overall we have a very passionate fan base. So I think there could be a match there that could work. I think in terms of results, I personally think they could at the start be difficult to come by because I think it's a very vastly different system, very different demands on the players, and a lot of them, because we've not had an overhaul, are still like Liam Manning players.
It's a good point. And you made another point, and I'll ask it to Mr. P. In terms of getting the fans on side, if you could give him one piece of advice to do that, what would it be?
Well, Tom's alluded to it already, that he shows a degree of emotion. You know, City fans like a manager who puts his heart on his sleeve out there. And I think the one thing, I mean, Liam was up against it from day one because of how people felt about Nigel. Not because Nigel's performances were stupendous, but the manner in which we handled somebody's departure. That split the fan base, right? Gerhard Struber coming in, it was the best that we could get, I think. It's united the fan base, yeah, and that's going to cut him some slack. If you look at the fixtures, there's no easy games in this division, yeah. But if we're out there playing the enterprising, full-on style that I know it was only a friendly, but I watched that game. There was an aggression about our play, and we were using, the aggression will be up a few notches when we get into the league games, without a doubt. You're going to have to use the bench, but you got nine substitutes. And when you look at City's squad, right, it is possible to bring in like for like now without weakening the team. Tom said at the beginning, or you might have said before we went live, Dave, Max Bird, how does he get into the starting 11? What about Stokes when he's overcome his injury? There's some players. So if we're going to play with that intensity, yeah, we've got the players that can come in without weakening it. We haven't got a team of stars, yeah. But I think the fans will be with him. And in Bristol, if we see people are committed, and we're scoring goals, the fans will cut him some slack because the fan base is united at the moment.
Yeah, which didn't happen under Liam Manning.
No.
I felt like there was a split between those that were massively in favour of Liam Manning and some that were like, about Liam Manning. I think that we were both on the about Liam Manning. But there's a real willingness for Gerhard Struber to be a success from everyone. I feel like everyone views it as the correct appointment. There's no disappointment. It's not going back to like a Dean Holden when he was appointed. Everyone just went, what?
Yeah.
Or when Liam Manning came in and he had to prove himself. It feels like Gerhard Struber doesn't have to prove himself. He's not on the back foot. I feel like there's a level of willingness in terms of season ticket sales. It's a record. I think that there's a real platform for him to now really push on and take this team, maybe not in terms of league position, but in terms of performance and connection with the fans, uniting the whole club as one.
Sure, yeah.
Real possibility.
What we can't afford to do, Dave, at Bramall Lane is to go up there and, we're probably going to lose out there.
Yeah.
But if we come back with anything from Sheffield United, just like we did the opening day of the 2014-15 season, we went up there and won that day, and that was a platform in a season when we probably were going to win. But if we come back with anything from Bramall Lane, I think that will set a platform that could be quite significant.
The thing with the Championship is anything can happen on any game, and you can never rule out any particular place. But at the same time, what you want to see in that first game is away from home, Sheffield United will be expecting to win it. You want to see a performance. Sometimes you get what you deserve in football, sometimes you don't. But if you come away thinking, well, if I see that a lot of times this season, I'll take it. That's what you want to see from that, at least in my opinion, what you want to see from that first game. Now, a next question, Tom, I'm putting you under the spot, and it may be a short question or a long question. Beyond Knight the Bell, beyond Morrison, who would you say is the academy player that may just threaten the first team squad this season? Who is the one that is just beyond that step up at the moment?
I actually think he's out on loan at the minute, and I think it's Jed Mearholes. I think that he's a fantastic player. He had injury issues last season, but in terms of stature, in terms of his ability, I think he's 6'2", left-footed, which is obviously a bonus, but really, really good. And I know coming up through the academy, really rated. But I also think that Ephraim Yeboah is going to get a chance. I think that Struber likes his intensity. That's clear. He likes his pressing power. And he looked like a guy that was on his way out, in pre-season. I was pretty surprised that he was in the Portugal thing, because arguably he had 2 failed loans at Dunfermline and Doncaster. So to see him involved in that first team setup was quite surprising to me. So
it set a marker, didn't it? It set a marker for everybody. This guy's still here. Everybody gets a fresh start. Your reputation will mean nothing.
I think it will be interesting what we do with Campbell Slurry when he's back fit. Do we send him out on loan in January? And if so, what level does he go at? Because it's clear that the club also view him as a potential guy that's able to push on. There's a lot of support, I feel, that behind him. Like an Atkinson, he signed the contract while being injured, so that shows that the club have a lot of faith in him, because he's not been rewarded with it. The club have gone, here's your contract now. Let's have a return on investment. Let's work together and see where you can go. But I think, for me, I think Leo Peakover, I think Luke Skinner, and I think Jed Mearholes are the top 3 brightest players we have in that academy setup at the minute.
Okay, so in terms of minutes, what is a successful introduction of the academy this season? Say it in games, in minutes. What do you want to see in terms of usage for both of you?
Well, last year it was about 45 minutes,
across the whole season.
Across the whole season. I think if you increase that by a tenfold factor, because when there's games when you're 3-0 up, we wish it could happen. You can bring on a youngster for 15 minutes. You'd have to be pretty mad to throw away a 3-goal lead with 15 minutes to go. But to add to what Tom was saying, I was just looking at that I'll call it the B team that played up at Cheltenham, and you've got people like that Ruben Shepherd,
very good player,
featured well. Murphy, who's on a first-team wage, we're led to believe, the Irish lad. Where's he going to go? Morrison, we've mentioned. Arroyo, the defender, he looked to be going out the door. He's back in the fold. I don't know whether he's signed a new contract. There's a young lad called Derek, Phillips as well, Raheem Nelson. There's some good youngsters coming through, and I'm afraid it's sort of got to be blatantly obvious taxi for Harry Cornick, that he's going to run his contract down because he's getting paid a nice wage. And dare I say it, Sam Bell, your time is up, really.
You've led me nicely in, because we'll come to a couple of those in a minute. Opening day team. What does it look like for both of you? Obviously, things can evolve, and you probably won't get all of them, but if you're starting that Sheffield United, if you're picking that first 11 today, who starts for both of you? Tom, you first.
I think it'll be Lumley in goal. I think it will be a back 3 of Atkinson, Viner, Tanner.
Okay.
I think left wing back it'll be McCrory. I think right wing back it'll be Sykes. I think it will be Randall Knight as your 2. I think it will be Scott Twine, and then it will be Emil Rees and Anis Mehmeti as your forward 2.
He's reading off your bit of paper.
Is he going? Oh yeah, it's
from
Morrison.
Yeah, pretty much.
I've got Morrison.
At the meeting that was had at the HBC, it was just a repeat of last year's meeting with the podcasters and Dan Carter being the journalist. But I disagree with what Tom says. Gerhard Streber, we were allowed to question Gerhard, and he's a lovely guy. It came across very well. And there were certain things said at that meeting that, if you understand what Chatham House rules mean, that certain things were said that don't go beyond those 4 walls, right? But, one of the things that Gerhard did say, I don't think he's under questioning. He is not a fan of playing square pegs in round holes. So I don't think McCrory would play at left back on that basis.
Is he a square peg, or has he been shaved off and slightly circular?
Best performances at left wing back. You just got to look at Preston.
But then why didn't he play him? Well, I think we'll get a better indication of what the starting lineup is against the Spanish opposition. But I'm inclined to agree with what Tom said and what you'd written down beforehand here, that I think the back 3, Tanner, Viner, Atkinson, Sykes is going to play. If you play your best players, then Sykes does play on the right with McCrory on the left, but he implied that that's not his preferred thing to play players out of position. Knight and Randall in the middle. Based on what we saw yesterday, then the front 3 of Twine, Mehmeti, and Rees, that would be it.
So if we look at that opening 11, just bringing it forward slightly, there's a number of players to come back for various reasons. You're talking Pring in the future, McNally and Moore in the future. Dickey, I think it's, 1 game suspension, 2, something like that. He's going to, going to be competing. So if we go for a back 3, Where does Bird fit into that 11? And does he fit into the best 11 once he's up to speed and ready?
I think you'd look to bring in Bird for Randall. In terms of a creative passer, you've got two very hard-working, high-energy players in terms of recovery in Knight and Randall, but they're quite samey. There's not, in terms of line-breaking passes, a lot of ability there.
So,
Potentially,
Tom,
Bird-
just to interrupt you, at the end of last season, Bird was playing essentially as the attacking midfielder with Twine not even in the side. Are we just not doing that anymore and bringing Bird back? What's the reason behind that?
I still think for me that Bird is better a little bit deeper, where he picks the ball up around the halfway line and he can play those through balls through, and he got a great passing range. I think Scott Twine, he's got to prove himself this season, but I think that I said before we went live, the player I've been most impressed with this pre-season has been Scott Twine, in terms of he looks like he's got more pace about him. It looks like he's got more bite about him. He looks better from open plays, involved more.
Nice little free kick towards the end.
Good free, yeah, but he is good at those.
He is good at those.
But I think Scott Twine, there's an acknowledgement on his behalf that maybe last season wasn't his best season for open play. He was playing through it, pain and injury for about 2-3 months at the end of the season. He's got that sorted. He's back. He wants to kick on. He wants to have a full season, and because the money we paid for him, it was a lot of money for a guy that's going to sit on your bench. A lot of money, particularly in our standards. And I think that Scott Twine can have a very good season, but Max Bird has a better passing range than Scott Twine. So
what you're essentially saying is, all things being equal, in the big game, in the big moment, you pick your best players. Randall's on the bench and Bird is in the side.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. P, you yesterday was our left wing back, essentially. Do you see that as something to use going forward into the season, or would that leave you slightly heart attack syndrome wise?
I think it would be fill your boots time, because neither you or Mehmeti on that left-hand side have got any sense of physicality about them. Somebody said to me when I was talking about it yesterday that you plays on the left when he plays for the Japanese team, so it's a position he's familiar with. But for me, when he's fit, and again, that's not going to be for another 3 to 4 months. That's Cam Pring's slot. Yeah. What's wrong with Morrison? Now that was another thing Streber said at the meeting, that you don't just give. I think the word is tokenism. You don't just put somebody in because you've got to be good enough to go in. So right here, right now, Hayden Roberts is probably a player that's going to go out through the door before the end of the season, before the season starts. I don't see anything in the rumours that Callum Stiles, who played under Streber at Barnsley, is going to come here. But if you look at that starting lineup from yesterday, then you would be the one that Streber would go against his convention and play McCory on that side. Because for me, if Morrison, could he start Morrison against the Spanish opposition next Saturday? Let people see him out there. That would send out a sign, I think, really. I want to see Stokes come back, because there's some good, I'll call it fringe players that are going to start challenging. But we've got to shift some out through the door as well, because, certainly Fally, his contribution, he was featuring in some of the early season videos, but he doesn't play with the intensity that Streber likes. And as Tom said, Yeboah, breakthrough player. Well, he was playing 2 years ago under Nigel.
Yes,
Nigel gave him 11, a lot of minutes. Yeah.
11 games.
He had 11 games. But Streber likes that explosive speed. And Sinclair Armstrong has got that explosive speed as well, which a few times yesterday he showed it, because if he can harness any semblance of skill, defenders are going to be terrified of him. Yeah.
For sure. You mentioned Stokes before as a key one. Do you think what is success for him this season? Because someone somewhere is going to have to miss out if he's in the side, quite obviously. And from what you've said, Twine has started pre-season quite well, but Stokes is right there. He's the exciting, bright thing. once he gets in, do you see him doing a George Murphy and establishing himself?
You took the words out of my mouth there, Dave, because I was going to say success for Stokes this season is getting as many minutes as George Murphy did. Now, George Murphy got injured, but once he's fit, he was player of the season at Cambridge. Yeah. He's got a physicality about him. He's got a little burst of speed about him that I don't think Twine has got. And maybe Twine's thinking, I got to up my game. I am fitter than I was. I got to up my game to keep this youngster out the side, and that's what you want. Stokes has signed a 3-year. He's signed up until 2028 now, isn't he? Yeah. So Stokes is the one player I want to see break through into the team and get minutes. And yeah, you're right. That's got to be at the expense of Scott Twine. Yeah. Because where else does he fit in? I don't know what Tom
could be for Mehmeti, I guess. It could be for the other side. And Tom, in terms of the front three and versions of it, do you think we'll see Armstrong and Ree together at any point this season? Do you think it will be every now and again, or do you think it will be a regular occurrence?
I think that Sinclair Armstrong will be a much more impacted player this season. I think that it will be, for me, I think it'll be Mehmeti and Ree that we see definitely off the start. Okay. I think that Anis yesterday was fantastic in terms of line-breaking runs that we don't really see from Anis, running in behind. There was one that was hoofed forward, and Anis looks as though he's offside, but he's actually made a really good run. And I think that Anis also has more technical abilities, more adaptable than Sinclair Armstrong. So in terms of in-game management, if it's not going well or something needs to change, you can change Anis Mehmeti. I think that Sinclair Armstrong is still young, but what has he done to warrant a start? You know, he's not proven it yet. Anis Mehmeti got 12 goals last year, fell off post-Christmas, but Sinclair Armstrong got 3. Yeah. You know, out the two, who's got a higher ceiling? I know that he's not signing a new deal, but you'd have
maybe because he was frozen out of the team. He wasn't being played by man, was he?
You know, he was on the bench, and if you put faith in Anis Mehmeti, will there be a return on that? Will there be another 12-goal season where he's consistent without the sort of when he's out wide? I think there's a Anis Mehmeti, I need to beat someone on the dribble, whereas in the last few games I've seen him, he's been so direct with the ball. He's just been going, right, I'm not going to do all my fancy footwork. I'm just going to get it and dribble. Yeah. And I'm going to dribble forward with pace, not the whole lackadaisical, let me try and walk it into the box. And then there's an intentness.
He's fit, though, because he was on the boot test? He's one of the fittest players.
The Bronco test.
The Bronco test. Fittest, yeah. And the other thing I'd say as well, Dave, again, recounting what Gerhard Streber said at the podcasters' sort of pre-season briefing, he was asked what players have impressed him pre-season, and he said pretty much unreservedly, you know, Zach Viner and Anis Mehmeti, and he talked about mental. He talked about how they think, and he said Mehmeti is a very bright individual. Mehmeti is a bright individual, you know. And maybe he'll get a new lease of life. So the fact that he's not signed his contract yet, right? He might just do that. One would hope he would do that, because if he's got a manager that believes in him, he might.
Quick question to you then. How do you feel that Struber's two most impressive players, both out of contract?
Well, exactly.
I have one more question.
I thought that. I said that when Struber left, we had an hour with Tom. We had an hour with Tom, and I said, well, both those are out of contract. They get them signed up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So I have one question regarding the first 11. In a world where, say, you or Morrison's on the left, as the right wing back or the right-sided player, if we're in a back three, would you consider Sykes or McCory to be your premier starter, shall we say? Who gets the nod if you have to choose between the two?
For me, McCory. I really like McCory. I think that Sykes is better technically, better passer, better crosser, but I like McCrory's aggression. I like his pace, and I just really like watching Ross McCrory play, in truth. Yeah. I think that he brings, when a tackle needs to be made, he's a bit Joe Williams-esque in terms of he'll just stump into someone, then bring it up.
I agree with you, but if I could make the argument for Sykes, he's a big man for the big moments, and
he is.
got goals in him, and this is what we need.
Well, McCory's got goals in him as well, though, Dave, hasn't he?
True.
I mean, look, it's a nice situation to have because you can say, go out and bust your ass for 60 minutes, because then if you're absolutely knackered, you've got somebody else that can come on that's just as good as you. With 9 subs, you can use 5.
I think McCrory's better defensively as well. I remember having some traumatic games watching Mark Sykes at right back, like Ipswich away, where I just had my head in my hands. When Sykes has lost his man, I think that with Ross McCrory, he does have a recovery pace about him. So if someone gets exposed, if George Tanner gets exposed on that right side, I think that he can quickly come back round. And I don't know, it's a really difficult debate because you're going to get more attacking output out of Mark Sykes. Yeah, so difficult debate.
Nice situation to be in.
No, exactly.
Sykes, another one out of contract.
He got 1 year extension.
He got 1 year extension last.
So it's like, I imagine from his point of view, if you were going to give me a new contract, you would have done it last season rather than just put me on the same wage.
No, this is the point. And just to wrap up today, one final question. With no games to extrapolate from, how many points do you think we'll finish with at the end of the season? What's your prediction for points now? Just totally out of nothing. What do you see us as a points total?
Well, I'll say 68.
Okay.
Which would be par, same as last season. 68.
Tom?
61.
Okay, 68. So you've gone points down. So Tom, do you think you will enjoy this season more than last season in terms of the overall performances based on those lower points?
Undoubtedly, I think that.
Undoubtedly, and is that acceptable to you? Less points, but more enjoyment.
Yes, because I think as long as you show a platform and a level of attacking football that is exciting, because we pay money to watch exciting football, not to see this horseshoe shape around. I don't mind a bit of risk in the right areas. And I think that he can unleash some of our better technical players like Anis Mehmeti. So I think, as well as bedding in the youngsters, this could be a successful season in terms of the club perspective without necessarily getting the same amount of points.
Mr. P, would you take the same if it was slightly less points, but you say enjoyed the whole of the season slightly more?
I think our away form needs to be better because we get a good away support, and they were let down last season too many occasions. I just want to enjoy. I want to enjoy the football, and we've had little glimpses. The games towards the end of last season was what we wanted to be like, and I can remember. I'll say this back in the day, late 60s when I first started going, you'd get 2 or 3 games a season where you'd think, my God, I'm glad it's not like that every week, and I can't remember what happened 2 weeks ago, but sometimes you can think back to seasons and think that was a bad game, or I can even remember the game that made me think that. Now we're in a situation where we get 3 really good games a season and the rest of it is a little bit meh. And I'd like to see half the games I go to coming away feeling entertained, or if it's a much better side, at least we've given them a game. And in fairness, we did that against all the top sides at Ashton Gate last season.
And there were some performances away from home, but there was times that we compromised our style of play to try and negate. So, I mean, against Sunderland away, we sat back, but we should have got a result. The only away performance I saw last season that we played a good style of play and didn't get a result against the top team was Sheffield United, where Sinclair Armstrong missed an absolute sitter of a header at the back.
Yeah, but those are those moments you remember. Great. Well, look, Dave, thank you for doing that hosting job today. The shape of things to come, if I may say. Noticing on the chat as well, Robin's Nest, Tom, what a great job he's been doing with some output on there. Be good to get you on, Tom, because you're the one who's making lots of statements on there, and let's ask you questions, a bit like Dave's done with me. Good to see all the fellow podcasters at the HPC as well. We had a great couple of hours out there overall. We'll be doing a match review of Valladolid. Yeah, we'll be doing a match review of that this time next week, and it'll be in the format of another preview as well. And then we'll probably do one more preview between the the game against Spanish opposition and the opening fixture against Sheffield United. And then obviously we'll be doing our match reviews as we have done for the last few years as soon after as is practically possible. But for those of you that have stirred your Sunday morning to watch us and later listen to us as the week progresses, thank you for that. And thanks to Dave for hosting today, Dave Tubby, and for Tom being here. Tom, we're not going to see so much of Tom because he's going off to Cardiff University, but he's always welcome to come on, and I'm sure he'll watch the games as they're played on stream over the coming weeks. But everybody today, thanks a lot